When I think about software excellence, it's more than just like, are we practicing test-driven development? Like, do we have clean API designs? It's more than that. And those are like implementation details, whereas specifically the goal from my perspective with software excellence is really more about, do our habits and our practices enable the products that we're building to evolve at the rate that they need to evolve and grow at, right? And that's really what when I think of engineering excellence, that's really what I'm thinking about. And then there are the specific tools that we use, the implementation details around that, but that's ultimately the overall goal.
It makes sense at different scales as well. So, we've talked about the organizations that we've seen that over-engineer a solution, especially like with DevOps, like, oh, we're gonna throw Istio at this, we're gonna throw like Kubernetes at this, and it's possible that they're never going to reach an organization scale that needs that style of DevOps to it. But then again, we also have, on the flip side, been at organizations that they are sort of just fighting each other because they don't know what the domain is. They don't have solid boundaries with one another. They don't have like the correct practices in place to scale their code base or their development group. Typically, when we go to one of our clients, what we try to do is assume we can eventually scale this company, or they will scale to maybe have their own developers. Maybe this will be a seed to their like larger digital transformation as a development company, because that's where a lot of like the industries are going, is you're going to need software in some form or fashion. What we try to instill is these sensible defaults of software excellence, but that doesn't try to over-engineer it. That doesn't assume that this is already a 10,000 person development group, but allows us to comfortably scale like the developers even within our own clients. And what are some of those practices that we can instill early on, and that will help us when we think that we're going to need another team, or we're going to need more developers on this group. How can we safely do that?
Yeah, in essence, what you're saying is like we want to help teams build to evolve. That a lot of times that software excellence means enabling teams to be able to grow their practices, in order to sort of deliver products more quickly. So like whenever I think of software excellence, I think of like helping people grow into these other practices whenever they need to. So we don't want to over-engineer, because over-engineering slows down things actually. But eventually some of those things, like some of those big idea things, might become necessary. But ultimately the thing that doesn't change is the fact that change happens. What practices can we do? What are those sensible defaults that we can have that will enable us to be able to grow into more and more maturity?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think some of those sensible defaults are?
Being able to test. Mm-hmm. So when I think of testing is a really big fundamental thing, because if I'm building just like a simple, I want to add two numbers together, what am I going to do to make sure that works? I might go plug in the two numbers and see does it add the numbers correctly. That is a test. But then the next sort of step above that is, what if I wrote code to actually do that for me? To actually plug in the two numbers, run the code, and verify that the result is actually the correct result. Once I've written that piece of code, I never have to test that again myself. I let the code run that test, and now I have built that small tiny foundation that enables me to make changes to my code base without breaking previous tests, so that I can make more changes more comfortably. So to me, testing is a really good foundation, because that, again, enables the change to happen.